A police dog wouldn't leave a sleeping child's side, and what officers discovered next broke them completely. The K9's behavior wasn't just unusual. It was a desperate plea that officers couldn't ignore. What they uncovered in the next few minutes would not only shatter their composure, but save a life hanging by the thinnest of threads. This is the story of an unbreakable bond that transcended species and defied explanation. Officer Marcus Kane had responded to hundreds of calls with Rex, his German Shepherd partner of 4 years. They'd tracked down fugitives, found missing hikers, and uncovered hidden drugs. But nothing prepared them for what awaited on this ordinary Tuesday night. K9 Unit 7. We've got a wellness check at 1432 Maple Street. Caller reports unusual noises. Marcus acknowledged the dispatch as Rex perked up his ears in the back seat. Just another routine call, or so he thought. As they pulled up to the modest 2-story home, everything seemed normal. Lights on? Nope. Signs of disturbance. But Rex was already alert, his body tense in a way Marcus had rarely seen. Something's got him worked up, Marcus told his partner as they approached the door. The moment the door opened, Rex's behavior shifted dramatically. Instead of his usual disciplined stance, he began pulling forcefully toward the interior of the house, nearly dragging Marcus up the stairs. But what Officer Marcus didn't know was that Rex's strange behavior was about to change lives forever. "I'm so sorry about this," Mrs. Peterson said, nervously eyeing Rex as the German Shepherd strained against his leash. "We've just been hearing some strange sounds. My husband thought it might be someone trying to break in through the back." Mr. Peterson nodded, arms crossed. "Probably nothing, but with the break-ins down the street last month?" Officer Marcus understood their concern, but Rex wasn't interested in their explanation. The dog's focus remained unwaveringly fixed on the staircase. His muscles coiled with tension. "Mind if we check the house?" Marcus asked, already being pulled toward the stairs by his determined partner. "Of course," Mrs. Peterson replied. "Our daughter Emma is sleeping upstairs. Please try not to wake her. She has a big test tomorrow." As they reached the top of the stairs, Rex's behavior intensified. He led Marcus directly to a door decorated with colorful butterfly stickers. The moment Mrs. Peterson opened it, Rex bolted inside, making a beeline for the small bed where a 7-year-old girl lay sleeping. "Rex, heel!" Marcus commanded sharply. But for the first time in their partnership, Rex completely ignored the order. The German Shepherd stood beside the bed, whining softly, his nose inches from Emma's face. When Marcus attempted to pull him away, Rex planted his paws firmly on the floor, refusing to budge. "I've never seen him act like this." Marcus apologized, growing concerned. "He's extensively trained. This isn't like him at all." Mrs. Peterson hovered nervously at the doorway. "Is something wrong with my daughter?" Marcus studied Emma more carefully. She appeared to be sleeping peacefully, her chest rising and falling with steady breaths. But Rex's behavior told a different story, one the human officers couldn't yet decipher. "Rex, come," Marcus commanded again, more firmly this time. The dog responded by lying down beside the bed, his eyes never leaving Emma's face. The truth behind Rex's desperate actions would soon shatter everyone's world. "Something's not right," Marcus said, his instincts as a police officer kicking in. He knelt beside Emma's bed, Rex's unusual behavior triggering alarm bells in his mind. In 15 years on the force, he'd learned to trust his partner's instincts above almost everything else. K9 officers possessed senses humans could only dream of. And right now, those senses were screaming that danger was present in this seemingly peaceful bedroom. The little girl's breathing seemed normal at first glance, But upon closer inspection, Marcus noticed her skin had a faint bluish tint around her lips and fingernails. Her breathing was shallow, too shallow, with occasional pauses that lasted a heartbeat too long. The rise and fall of her chest beneath her unicorn-patterned pajamas was barely perceptible in the dim glow of her nightlight. "Mrs. Peterson, when did Emma go to bed?" he asked, carefully placing 2 fingers against the child's neck to check her pulse. It was there, but weaker than it should be, with an irregular rhythm that sent another spike of concern through him. "Around 8, like usual. She said she was tired after soccer practice," Mrs. Peterson replied, her voice tightening with growing concern. She twisted her wedding ring nervously, a mother's intuition beginning to align with the officer's professional suspicion. "She seemed fine when I tucked her in. I read her a story. She even laughed at the funny parts." Marcus's training took over, years of emergency response coursing through his veins. "Call an ambulance, now." His tone left no room for questions or hesitation. As Mr. Peterson rushed to make the call, nearly tripping over a stuffed teddy bear in his haste to reach the hallway phone, Marcus gently tried to rouse Emma. "Emma! Emma, can you hear me?" He rubbed her sternum with his knuckles, a stimulus that would normally cause discomfort enough to wake someone from ordinary sleep. The child didn't respond, remaining unnaturally still despite the pressure. Only the slight flutter of her eyelids indicated she wasn't completely unresponsive. Rex whined again, more urgently this time, his nose nudging at something on the nightstand. That's when Marcus noticed it. A nearly empty bottle of children's cough medicine beside a glass of water, the purple liquid leaving a faint ring at the bottom of the cup. Next to it sat a dog-eared copy of Charlotte's Web, and a unicorn nightlight casting soft shadows across the pink walls. Did Emma take any medication tonight?" he asked urgently, picking up the bottle to check the dosage information. Mrs. Peterson's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes widening with sudden realization. "Just some cough syrup for her cold. The regular children's dose." Her voice trembled slightly as she added, "She's been fighting a little bug this week. Nothing serious, just a sniffle and slight cough." Marcus quickly scanned the room, his trained eyes noticing details that others might miss. The perfectly arranged stuffed animals watching from their shelf, the soccer trophies gleaming in the corner, the school backpack prepared for tomorrow, Emma's homework neatly tucked inside a folder decorated with stars and encouraging teacher's notes. And then he spotted something that made his blood run cold. A prescription bottle on the floor, partially hidden under the bed, as if it had rolled there. He reached for it, reading the label with growing horror as the pieces fell into place with devastating clarity. "These are your husband's sleeping pills," he said, his voice steady despite the adrenaline surging through him. "The cap isn't on tight. Some are missing." He shook the bottle gently, counting approximately 5 tablets less than the prescription label indicated should remain. The realization hit Mrs. Peterson like a physical blow. Her face drained of color as she staggered slightly, bracing herself against the doorframe. "Oh, God. She's been watching us take our pills. She always wants to be grown up like Mommy and Daddy." Her voice broke as tears welled in her eyes. Last week she was pretending to take vitamins with her toy tea set. "I thought it was just play." Marcus immediately began emergency procedures, rolling Emma onto her side in the recovery position while checking her airway remained clear. His movements were practiced and precise, even as his mind raced with calculations about dosages. Time elapsed, and the child's small body. Wait. Rex remained vigilant beside him. his intelligent eyes never leaving Emma's face, occasionally nudging her hand with his nose as if trying to wake her himself. The dog had detected what humans couldn't see: the subtle changes in Emma's scent as the dangerous combination of medications slowly suppressed her central nervous system. The chemical signatures of metabolizing drugs, the slight alterations in her breath composition, the microscopic perspiration changes, all invisible to human senses, but as clear as alarm bells to Rex's remarkable olfactory capabilities. Through the open window came the distant wail of approaching sirens, growing steadily louder as they navigated the suburban streets. Mrs. Peterson sobbed quietly in the hallway as her husband held her, both parents trapped in that terrible limbo of helplessness that comes when your child is in danger and you can do nothing but wait. "Her pulse is steady but slow," Marcus reported, maintaining a calm demeanor despite the gravity of the situation. "Keep talking to her," he instructed the parents. "Let her hear your voices." Mr. Peterson moved closer, his own hands trembling as he stroked his daughter's hair. "Emma Bear, Daddy's here," he whispered, using a nickname that suddenly made him look vulnerable in a way that struck Marcus deeply. "The doctors are coming to help you feel better." When the paramedics arrived minutes later, two efficient professionals who moved with the controlled urgency of those accustomed to life-and-death situations, they confirmed what Rex had somehow known. Emma was in the early stages of a life-threatening overdose. The combination of the antihistamine in the cough syrup and the benzodiazepine in the sleeping medication had created a dangerous synergistic effect, particularly in someone of Emma's size. Respiratory depression, bradycardia, hypotension. One paramedic rattled off to his partner as they established an IV line and prepared to move her. "Possible CNS, depression. We need to get her to Children's Memorial Stat." Without immediate medical intervention, she would have slipped away in her sleep, never to wake again. Her parents finding her lifeless body in the morning, with all the unimaginable horror and grief that would have followed. As they rushed Emma to the ambulance, carefully navigating the stretcher down the narrow staircase while Mr. and Mrs. Peterson followed in a daze of fear and hope, one of the paramedics turned to Marcus. "If you hadn't checked on her..." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. The implications hung in the air between them, the unthinkable alternative timeline, where this night ended in tragedy instead of rescue. Marcus looked down at Rex, who padded silently beside him, mission accomplished, but still alert, still concerned. The shepherd's ears remained perked forward, his posture indicating he wasn't fully satisfied that his charge was safe yet. "It wasn't me," Marcus said quietly, a hand resting on his partner's head in a gesture of profound respect. "It was him." He knew something was wrong before any of us had a clue. The truth hit Marcus with stunning clarity as they watched the ambulance doors close, red lights painting the suburban street in pulses of emergency. Rex hadn't just been acting strangely. He hadn't been misbehaving or forgetting his training. He had been desperately trying to save a life the only way he knew how, by refusing to leave, by insisting the humans pay attention to what their limited senses couldn't detect. As they returned to their patrol car, Marcus knelt down to Rex's level, looking into those intelligent brown eyes that had seen what no human could. "Good boy," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "The best boy." But even as he offered the praise, Marcus knew it was inadequate for what had transpired tonight. Some bonds transcend the normal relationships between species. Some acts of heroism can't be rewarded with treats or toys or words. Tonight, Rex had demonstrated something profound about connection and communication that went beyond training manuals. and police protocols. And somewhere in the night, an ambulance raced toward the hospital, carrying a little girl who would have a tomorrow because of a dog who refused to be ignored. The emergency room at Children's Memorial Hospital hummed with the quiet efficiency of a place where life and death decisions were made every hour of every day. The antiseptic smell, the soft beeping of monitors, the hushed conversations. It was a familiar environment for Marcus after 15 years on the force. He sat in the waiting room, his uniform drawing occasional glances from other anxious families. Some looked at him with curiosity, others with the wariness that police presence sometimes evoked. But most were too consumed by their own worries to pay him much attention. Rex lay at his feet, unusually subdued but alert, as if he understood the gravity of where they were. The German shepherd's ears twitched at every announcement over the PA system, every squeak of rubber-soled shoes on the linoleum floor. Twice, he'd lifted his head when the elevator doors opened, as if expecting to see someone familiar. Marcus absently stroked the dog's fur, drawing comfort from the warm, solid presence of his partner. The digital clock on the wall read 2:17 a.m. They'd been waiting for nearly 3 hours, though it felt much longer. Marcus had called in their situation to dispatch, and Sergeant Ramirez had authorized them to remain at the hospital until they had news of Emma's condition. "Some paperwork matters more than others," she'd said simply. "Officer Kane?" Marcus looked up to see a doctor in blue scrubs approaching. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and fatigue lines creased the corners of her eyes. But her stride was purposeful and alert. Her ID badge identified her as Dr. Sarah Chen, Pediatric Emergency Medicine. "Yes, that's me," Marcus said, standing immediately. Rex rose alongside him, sensing the importance of the moment. Dr. Chen's expression softened as she took in the officer and his K9 partner. "Emma Peterson is stable now. We've been working to counteract the effects of the medication combination." "How is she?" Marcus asked, the question simple but loaded with concern. "She's going to be okay," Dr. Chen replied, and Marcus felt his shoulders drop slightly with relief. "We've administered activated charcoal to absorb any remaining medication in her system and a specific antagonist for the benzodiazepine. Her vital signs are stabilizing, and we'll be monitoring her overnight. But we expect a full recovery." The relief that washed over Marcus was profound, almost physical in its intensity. He'd seen too many calls end differently, too many times when even the best efforts weren't enough, too many times when he'd had to stand by as families received the worst news imaginable. Rex seemed to sense the shift in mood, sitting up straighter, his tail sweeping gently across the linoleum floor. "Thank you, Doctor," Marcus said, meaning it more deeply than the simple words could convey. "The parents, are they with her?" Dr. Chen nodded. "They haven't left her side since we allowed them in. Mr. Peterson keeps saying they need to thank you properly." She glanced down at her pager as it beeped, checked it quickly, then looked back up. "In fact, the Petersons asked if you could come back. They're with Emma now in room 204. Marcus nodded, suddenly feeling a strange mix of emotions. In most cases, once he'd handed a medical emergency over to professionals, his job was done. Reports would be filed, perhaps follow-ups conducted, but the personal connection usually ended at the hospital doors. Tonight was different. "Is it all right if Rex comes too? He paused, searching for the right words to explain something he himself didn't fully understand. "He's the one who really saved her." Dr. Chen raised an eyebrow but nodded. "Normally, we have strict policies about animals, but considering the circumstances, just keep him close." and maybe this is a conversation for another time. But I'd be interested to hear more about how a dog detected what appears to have been a medication overdose. There's growing research on canines and medical detection that's quite fascinating. I'd be happy to discuss it sometime, Marcus replied. To be honest, I'm still processing it myself. The walk to Emma's room felt longer than it should have. The pediatric wing was decorated with cheerful murals of forests and fairy tales, a stark contrast to the serious medical equipment visible through doorways. Marcus had been in countless hospital corridors over his career, but tonight was different. Tonight wasn't about gathering evidence or taking statements. Tonight was about witnessing the aftermath of something miraculous. A nurse at the station gave them a curious look, but seeing Dr. Chen accompanying them, simply nodded and returned to her computer. As they approached room 204, Marcus felt an unexpected nervousness. What could he possibly say to the family whose daughter might have died without Rex's inexplicable intervention? When they entered room 204, the scene that greeted them was one of exhausted relief. Emma lay in the hospital bed, small beneath the white sheets, an IV in her arm, and monitoring equipment beeping steadily beside her. Her color had improved dramatically, the dangerous blue tint replaced by the healthy flush of a child who would live to see morning. Her blonde hair was spread across the pillow, and someone, her mother probably, had tied a small pink ribbon in it, a touching attempt at normalcy in the sterile hospital environment. Mrs. Peterson sat beside the bed, holding her daughter's hand as if afraid to let go. The terror of earlier had faded from her face, replaced by the bone-deep weariness that follows extreme stress. Mr. Peterson stood at the window, staring out at the city lights, his shoulders finely relaxed from the rigid tension of earlier. A half-empty cup of vending machine coffee sat on the windowsill next to him, likely cold and forgotten. When they noticed Marcus and Rex, both parents' faces transformed with emotion. Gratitude, relief, and something deeper that Marcus recognized from other cases where he'd been part of saving a life. A particular kind of bond that forms between strangers in moments of crisis. Officer Kane, Mrs. Peterson said, rising from her chair, her voice breaking. We don't even know how to begin thanking you. Her eyes were red-rimmed from crying, but she managed a tremulous smile. Mr. Peterson crossed the room in 3 quick strides, extending his hand. What you did tonight? His voice caught, and he cleared his throat before continuing. What you both did. He looked down at Rex, who was sitting perfectly at attention beside Marcus. Marcus shook the offered hand firmly. I'm just glad we were there. He meant it sincerely. The thought of what might have happened if their patrol hadn't brought them to the Peterson home was too awful to contemplate. He gestured to Rex, who was watching Emma intently from the doorway. And honestly, he's the real hero tonight. I was just following his lead. Dr. Chen, who had been checking Emma's vital signs and making notes in her chart, looked up with interest at this exchange. At that moment, Emma stirred, her eyes fluttering open. For a moment, she seemed confused by her surroundings, blinking slowly at the unfamiliar ceiling, the medical equipment, the faces watching her anxiously. But then her gaze landed on Rex, and recognition flickered across her features. A small smile spread across her face, transforming her from a patient back into a child again. Doggy, she murmured, her voice raspy but unmistakably alive. Something extraordinary happened then. Rex, who had been maintaining a respectful distance, moved forward, without command. With the gentle precision that made him exceptional at his job, he approached the bed and rested his chin on the edge of the mattress, just within reach of Emma's small hand. His brown eyes, usually alert and scanning for threats, were soft as he watched the little girl. Mrs. Peterson gasped softly, her hand flying to her mouth. Dr. Chen paused in her note-taking, watching the interaction with professional curiosity. "It's okay," Marcus assured them. "Rex is extremely well trained. He won't hurt her." "I'm not worried about that at all," Mrs. Peterson said, wiping away a fresh tear. It's like he knows, like he understands what happened." Mr. Peterson moved to stand beside his wife, placing a supportive hand on her shoulder. "The doctor said if she'd been found even 2 hours later." His voice trailed off, the sentence hanging unfinished in the air, the alternative reality too painful to voice. "But she wasn't," Marcus said firmly, wanting to pull them back from that precipice of what-ifs. "She's here, she's getting better, and that's what matters now." Emma's small fingers had found Rex's ear, stroking it weakly. The German shepherd remained perfectly still, allowing the touch with a patience that went beyond his training. There was something almost reverent in his stillness, as if he understood the fragility of the life he had helped save. "How did you know?" Mrs. Peterson asked, looking at Rex with wonder. How could he possibly know something was wrong when she just looked like she was sleeping? Marcus had been pondering the same question since they'd left the Peterson house. "Dogs have senses we can't even comprehend," he explained. "Their sense of smell is exponentially more powerful than ours. They can detect changes in body chemistry, in breath composition. Some studies suggest they can smell certain diseases before medical tests can detect them." He watched as Emma weakly stroked Rex's ear. "But honestly, sometimes I think it goes beyond science. Rex has always had exceptional instincts, even for a police dog." Dr. Chen nodded. "There's fascinating research being done on dogs detecting everything from cancer to blood sugar changes to seizures before they happen. The chemical markers they can identify are remarkable." She made another note in the chart. "Though I don't know of any studies specifically on medication overdose detection. Maybe Rex could be your first case study," Mr. Peterson suggested, with the first genuine smile Marcus had seen from him all night. A knock at the door interrupted them. A woman in her 50s with a sensible bob and reading glasses hanging from a chain around her neck entered. Her expression was professional but kind, and Marcus immediately recognized the type. Social services. "Mr. and Mrs. Peterson? I'm Diane Wilkins from Child Services. I need to ask you some questions about what happened tonight." The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. The Petersons exchanged nervous glances, and Mrs. Peterson's hand tightened protectively around Emma's. Marcus recognized the protocol. Any case involving a child with accidental drug ingestion would trigger an automatic assessment. It was necessary, but could feel accusatory to parents already traumatized by a near tragedy. "It's standard procedure," Marcus assured them quietly. "Just be honest about what happened. This was clearly an accident, and you did everything right once it was discovered." Mr. Peterson nodded gratefully at Marcus before turning to address the social worker. "Of course, we understand. Whatever you need to know." "I'll give you some privacy," Marcus said, sensing it was time to step back. "We should be getting back on patrol anyway." "Wait," Mrs. Peterson said suddenly. Would it be possible for you to visit again, when Emma's more awake? I think she'd like to properly meet the dog who saved her life." The request touched something in Marcus. In 15 years of police work, he'd learned to maintain professional distance, to do his job without becoming emotionally involved. But there were exceptions. Cases that got under your skin. People who became more than just names in a report. "I'd like that," he said simply. "Just let the department know when she's feeling up to visitors." As the social worker began her gentle questioning, Marcus took the opportunity to step out into the hallway with Rex. The adrenaline that had carried him through the evening was finally subsiding, leaving him drained but profoundly grateful. He leaned against the wall for a moment, taking a deep breath, and looked down at his partner. "You did good tonight, buddy," he said softly. "Really good." Rex looked up at him with those intelligent eyes that seemed to understand far more than any animal should, and Marcus felt that familiar connection that had developed over their 3 years working together. It wasn't just handler and K9. It was a partnership built on trust, communication, and a shared purpose. Dr. Chen emerged from the room, closing the door quietly behind her. "Officer Kane, before you go, I was serious about being interested in Rex's abilities. We're always looking to improve early detection methods, especially in pediatric emergencies. Would you be open to discussing this further at some point? Perhaps with our research department?" Marcus considered it. "I'd need to clear it with my superiors, but yes, I think that could be valuable." She handed him a business card. "Excellent. And for what it's worth, in my 15 years of emergency medicine, I've learned to appreciate the inexplicable as much as the scientifically proven. Whatever allowed your dog to detect what was happening to Emma tonight, science or something else, it made all the difference." They shook hands, and Dr. Chen returned to her rounds, leaving Marcus with a new perspective on Rex's capabilities. Perhaps there was more to his partner's abilities than even the extensive police K9 training could explain. His radio crackled to life, breaking the moment of reflection. "K9 Unit 7, are you clear to respond? We have reports of a possible break-in at 67 Westmore Avenue." Marcus straightened, the familiar call to duty bringing him back to the present moment. He pressed the button on his shoulder mic. "Dispatch, this is K9 Unit 7. What's the situation at Westmore?" Silent alarm triggered at the rear entrance. No confirmation of intruders yet. Patrol Units 12 and 17 are en route, but requesting K9 support. Marcus looked down at Rex, who gazed back with those intelligent eyes that had seen what no human could. Tonight had been a powerful reminder of why he'd become a police officer in the first place. Not just to enforce laws, but to protect lives. And it had been an equally powerful reminder of the extraordinary bond between humans and the animals who serve alongside them. "K9 Unit 7 responding," he said into his radio. "We're on our way. ETA approximately 12 minutes. As they walked out of the hospital into the cool night air, Marcus felt a renewed sense of purpose. The city stretched before them, a tapestry of lights and shadows, of ordinary lives and hidden emergencies. Somewhere out there, another situation awaited their unique skills. Rex trotted beside him, alert once more, ready for whatever came next. The transition from the emotional intensity of the hospital room to the professional focus of their next call was part of the job. The constant shifting between the deeply personal impact of their work and the procedural requirements of law enforcement. They reached their patrol vehicle, and Rex jumped into his specially designed compartment without command, already focused on their next mission. Marcus slid behind the wheel, started the engine, and pulled away from the hospital. In the rearview mirror, he could see the lights of the pediatric wing, knowing that in room 204, a family had been given a second chance. A little girl would go home, would return to school, would grow up and have all the experiences that had nearly been stolen from her tonight. Whatever the rest of their shift might bring, they had already accomplished something remarkable tonight. They had given a family a second chance, a little girl a future, and for a K-9 officer and his four-legged partner, there could be no greater reward than that. As they drove toward their next call, Marcus made a mental note to pick up a special treat for Rex when their shift ended. Some acts of heroism deserved more than just the standard good boy. Even if Rex would be just as happy with those two simple words as with any tangible reward. That was the beauty of his partner's character. The work itself, the chance to make a difference, was always reward enough. The radio crackled with updates about the break-in as Marcus navigated the quiet streets. But part of him remained back in that hospital room, with a little girl whose life had been saved by the extraordinary senses of an ordinary German shepherd who had simply refused to be ignored. 3 weeks after that fateful night, Marcus and Rex returned to the Peterson home under very different circumstances. This time, they arrived in broad daylight, the spring sunshine warming the suburban neighborhood that had seemed so ominous in the darkness. The patrol car pulled up to the curb, and Marcus took a moment to observe the house before exiting the vehicle. What had been a scene of emergency and fear was now transformed. Balloons in red, white, and blue bobbed cheerfully from the mailbox, and a hand-painted banner stretched across the garage door reading, "Thank you, Officer Kane and Rex," in a child's careful lettering, surrounded by colorful handprints and paw prints. "This feels strange," Marcus admitted to his partner as they walked up the driveway. In 15 years of law enforcement, he'd responded to thousands of calls, but follow-ups like this were rare. Usually, once the immediate crisis was handled, officers moved on to the next emergency, the next call for help. The continuous flow of need rarely allowed for closure, for seeing the aftermath of lives touched or saved. Rex seemed to understand, walking with unusual formality beside him. The German shepherd's ears were perked forward, alert but relaxed, a stark contrast to his urgent behavior during their last visit. His nails clicked rhythmically on the concrete, his badge and newly cleaned harness gleaming in the sunlight. The front doors opened before they reached it, as if someone had been watching for their arrival. Emma stood there, flanked by her parents, looking like any other healthy 8-year-old. No trace remained of the dangerously still child they'd found that night. The blue-tinged lips, the shallow breathing, the unresponsiveness that had signaled how close she'd come to slipping away. Instead, her cheeks were flushed with excitement, her eyes bright and alert. Her blonde hair was pulled into pigtails tied with blue ribbons that matched her dress, and she wore a t-shirt featuring a cartoon police dog that Marcus suspected had been purchased specifically for this occasion. "They're here," she called over her shoulder, then stepped forward with the solemn importance of a child with a mission. She held a large, somewhat misshapen envelope in her hands, decorated with so much glitter that it left a sparkling trail on the porch. "Officer Kane, I made you and Rex something to say thank you for saving my life." Marcus knelt down to her level, accepting the homemade card. The front featured a crayon drawing of a police officer and a German shepherd standing beside a small blonde girl, all three holding hands. The disproportionate sizes and somewhat wobbly lines only added to its charm. Inside, in careful block letters, Emma had written, "Thank you for saving me. You are my heroes forever. Love, Emma." Surrounding the message were dozens of hearts and stars, and what appeared to be an attempt to draw Rex's paw print in purple marker. "Thank you, Emma. That's very thoughtful," Marcus said, genuinely touched by the gesture. "Rex and I will keep this in a special place." Mrs. Peterson stood behind her daughter, one hand resting protectively on Emma's shoulder. She looked remarkably different from the terrified, disheveled mother of 3 weeks ago. Today, Her hair was neatly styled, her clothes carefully chosen, but it was the peace in her expression that marked the greatest change. The haunted look of a parent facing her worst nightmare had been replaced by profound gratitude. "We wanted to do something more formal to express our gratitude," she said, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "Perhaps a donation to the K-9 unit, or a letter to your superiors." But Emma insisted that a party would be better. "Much better," Mr. Peterson agreed, stepping forward to extend his hand to Marcus. His grip was firm, conveying what words might fail to express. "Please, come in. There are some people who'd like to meet you." As they crossed the threshold, Marcus noted how different the house felt in daylight, filled with voices and laughter. The staircase that had seemed so ominous as they'd climbed it that night now displayed family photos and children's artwork. Emma's soccer trophies gleamed on a shelf in the hallway, testaments to a childhood that would continue. Inside, the living room had been transformed with streamers and more balloons. A table laden with refreshments stood against one wall, featuring a cake decorated with a police badge and what appeared to be a German shepherd rendered in blue frosting. A small gathering of people turned as they entered. Grandparents, judging by their age and the resemblance to the Petersons. Neighbors, some of whom Marcus vaguely recognized from canvassing the area after other incidents in the neighborhood. And a few of Emma's friends with their parents, the children regarding Rex with wide-eyed fascination. But what caught Marcus's attention was the presence of Captain Rivera from the police department and Mayor Chen, both in casual clothes, but unmistakably present in an official capacity. The captain nodded at Marcus with a hint of pride, while the mayor smiled warmly, clearly aware of why she had been invited. "Officer Kane?" The captain greeted him with a nod. "Quite a story you and Rex have created. Not often we get to see the impact of our work so clearly." Before Marcus could respond, Emma had already moved to Rex's side, looking up at Marcus with questioning eyes. Her hand hovered uncertainly near Rex's fur. "Can I pet him now? Mom said I had to ask first because he's working." "Of course," Marcus replied, giving Rex the hand signal that indicated he could interact freely. "He's been looking forward to seeing you again." It wasn't just a platitude. Rex had indeed seemed unusually eager when they'd received the invitation to visit the Peterson home, whether it was the location or some memory of Emma herself. The dog had exhibited clear recognition when Marcus mentioned returning to the house. As Emma carefully stroked Rex's fur, her small fingers moving with reverent gentleness over his head, Mayor Chen stepped forward. She was a petite woman in her 50s, with a reputation for genuine concern about community issues. Rare enough in politics that it had earned her widespread respect. "The Petersons contacted my office about what happened," she explained, her voice carrying the practiced cadence of someone accustomed to public speaking, but with an undercurrent of genuine emotion. "It's not often we get to recognize this kind of work. The kind that doesn't make headlines, but makes all the difference to one family." Captain Rivera nodded in agreement. "The department would like to present a commendation for both of you." He glanced meaningfully at Rex, who was now sitting patiently as Emma showed him her favorite stuffed animal, a well-loved plush dog that bore a passing resemblance to the German shepherd himself. An elderly woman who had been watching from nearby approached, leaning slightly on a cane. "I'm Emma's grandmother," she introduced herself, her voice wavering slightly with age, but firm with purpose. "I've lived 78 years, young man, and I don't believe I've ever witnessed such a miracle as what you and your dog accomplished." When they called to tell me what happened, she paused, composing herself. "Well, let's just say I've been praying for you both every night since." The ceremony that followed was brief but meaningful, conducted in the Petersons' living room with the assembled guests forming an impromptu audience. Mrs. Peterson had arranged chairs in a semicircle, and Emma sat front and center, beaming with importance as the mayor stepped forward to speak. Mayor Chen spoke eloquently about community heroes, about the bonds between officers and their canine partners, about the difference one alert response could make in a family's life. She touched on the broader implications, how this story reminded everyone of the value of the police department's canine program, the importance of trusting instincts and training, and the profound impact that could come from officers going above and beyond their duty. In a world that often focuses on division and conflict, she concluded, it's stories like these that remind us of our shared humanity and the extraordinary connections that can form between people. And yes, even between people and animals, in moments of crisis. Captain Rivera then presented a formal commendation for Marcus's personnel file, reading aloud the official language that somehow managed to distill the night's events into bureaucratically acceptable terminology while still conveying their significance. More surprisingly, he produced a special K9 service medal for Rex, an unusual honor that Marcus knew was not given lightly. The department recognizes that, without K9 Rex's alert and persistence, this story would have had a very different ending, the captain said, his normally gruff voice softening slightly. His actions exemplify the highest standards of the K9 unit and the department as a whole. As Marcus pinned the medal to Rex's working vest, carefully attaching it so it wouldn't interfere with the dog's movement, he felt a surge of pride that went beyond professional satisfaction. This wasn't about recognition or accolades. It was about connection, the invisible threads that linked a police officer, a remarkable dog, and a little girl who now had her whole life ahead of her because of a series of events that still seemed somewhat miraculous, even to Marcus's pragmatic mind. Rex sat perfectly still during the ceremony, his posture regal and attentive, as if he understood the significance of the moment. When Emma stepped forward to place a child-sized lei of paper flowers around his neck, apparently her own addition to the ceremony, he lowered his head slightly to accommodate her, a gesture that brought smiles to everyone watching. I think he knows exactly what's happening, Mr. Peterson murmured to Marcus. I've never seen such awareness in an animal before. The party continued after the formal recognition, with cake, including a special dog-friendly treat for Rex that Mrs. Peterson had ordered from a local pet bakery, and conversations that flowed easily between strangers now connected by an extraordinary experience. Marcus found himself explaining K9 training to fascinated children who wanted to know if Rex could do tricks. Yes, but they weren't tricks so much as trained behaviors. And if he lived at Marcus's house, he did, in a special area set up for his comfort and needs. He also found himself drawn into a surprisingly technical discussion about the potential for medical detection dogs with Emma's grandmother, the retired nurse, who revealed that she had been following research on canines, detecting cancer and other conditions. What your Rex did, she said thoughtfully, sipping her tea. It goes beyond what most of the studies have documented. Detecting an overdose in progress. There could be tremendous applications for that kind of capability. Have you considered reaching out to any medical research programs? Marcus admitted that Dr. Chen from the hospital had suggested something similar. To be honest, I'm still trying to understand exactly what happened that night. Rex has always been exceptional at his job, but this was something different. The grandmother nodded knowingly. Sometimes the most important discoveries come from observations we can't immediately explain. That's how medicine advances. Across the room, Emma had organized a small group of her friends to take turns gently petting Rex, who endured the attention with remarkable patience. Each child approached with varying degrees of caution, clearly having been instructed on the proper way to interact with a working dog. Rex remained calm and steady, occasionally glancing toward Marcus, as if checking that this unusual duty was still approved. One of the neighbors, a middle-aged man Marcus vaguely recognized, approached with a plate of food. "I've lived next door to the Petersons for 6 years," he said by way of introduction. "Watched Emma grow up. Good kid, good family." He paused, seeming to search for words. "What I can't stop thinking about is how random it all was. If you hadn't been patrolling this street that night, if your dog hadn't reacted the way he did." He shook his head. "Makes you think about all the things that have to go right sometimes, you know." Marcus did know. In his years on the force, he'd seen both sides of that equation. The miraculous convergences of circumstance that led to lives saved, and the equally random tragedies where help came just minutes too late. It was something officers learned to live with, that awareness of how thin the line could be between vastly different outcomes. Later, as the gathering began to wind down, with some guests already saying their goodbyes and Emma's younger friends being collected by parents for afternoon naps, Mr. Peterson approached Marcus with a small box wrapped in silver paper. "This is from all of us," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Not just a thank you, but a reminder." Marcus carefully unwrapped the package. Inside was a silver frame containing a photo of Emma and Rex taken earlier at the party, her arm around his neck, both looking directly at the camera. Emma's smile was wide and unguarded, the smile of a child with no awareness of how close she had come to having no future at all. Rex's expression was more difficult to read, as canine expressions often are to human eyes. But there was something in the tilt of his head, the alertness of his gaze, that suggested a special awareness of the child beside him. Below the photo was a small silver plaque with an inscription, "To Officer Kane and Rex, for seeing what others couldn't. With eternal gratitude, the Peterson family." Marcus was surprised by the lump that formed in his throat. In 15 years of police work, he'd received commendations and thanks, certificates of appreciation and letters from grateful citizens. But nothing had affected him quite like this simple gift. Perhaps because it acknowledged not just what they had done, but how they had done it. How Rex had perceived what no human could detect, and how Marcus had trusted his partner enough to follow that lead into what had seemed, at first, like a routine check. "I don't know how to explain what happened that night," Mr. Peterson continued, his own voice unsteady. "The doctors said it was a miracle we found her in time. But it wasn't a miracle, it was Rex. It was you trusting your partner enough to listen when he was trying to tell you something." Marcus nodded, unable to find adequate words for a moment. "That's the foundation of K9 work," he finally said. "The partnership, the trust. Rex and I have been together for 3 years now, and there's a communication there that goes beyond commands and training. It saved our daughter's life," Mrs. Peterson said simply, joining them. "And we'll never forget that." The mayor and captain had already departed, with promises to feature the story in the department newsletter and possibly the local paper, though Marcus had gently discouraged too much publicity. K9 officers tended to prefer working out of the spotlight, and he was no exception. As they prepared to leave, Emma approached them one last time, her expression serious beyond her years. She had changed into more casual clothes, jeans and a t-shirt, but still wore the special necklace her parents had given her to commemorate her recovery, a small silver pendant in the shape of a guardian angel. "Officer Kane? Can Rex come visit again sometime? Not because he saved me, but just because he's my friend now? The question was asked with such earnest hope that Marcus couldn't help but smile. I think we'd both like that very much, Emma. Maybe when Rex isn't on duty, we can arrange a special visit. Her face lit up. I could read to him. Mom says I'm getting really good at reading chapter books now. Do you think Rex would like Charlotte's Web? It has animals in it. I think he'd enjoy that very much, Marcus assured her, touched by the child's desire to give something back to the dog who had saved her life. Rex is an excellent listener. As they said their final goodbyes, with promises to stay in touch, Marcus was struck by how different this departure felt from their last exit from this house. That night, they had left with Emma's life hanging in the balance, with the wail of ambulance sirens fading into the distance. Today, they left with the sound of a child's laughter following them down the driveway. Walking back to their patrol car, Marcus reflected on the strange paths that sometimes appeared in life. A routine patrol, an unusual behavior from his partner, and now a connection that would likely last for years to come. The photograph in its silver frame would join the few personal items he kept in his locker at the station. A reminder not just of a successful intervention, but of why the job mattered in the first place. As they pulled away from the curb, Rex settled into his compartment with a contented sigh, the new metal catching the afternoon sunlight. He looked at Marcus through the partition, those intelligent brown eyes somehow conveying satisfaction in a job well done. "You've set a high bar for yourself, buddy," Marcus said with a smile. "But somehow, I think you're up to the challenge." They drove in comfortable silence for a while, heading back toward the station to file their daily reports. The city passed by outside the windows, people going about their ordinary lives, unaware of the small miracle that had been celebrated in a suburban living room that afternoon. Marcus's radio crackled to life. "K9 Unit 7, are you available for a call? We've got a missing child reported in Westside Park, 9-year-old boy, last seen near the duck pond approximately 30 minutes ago." Without hesitation, Marcus reached for his radio. "K9 Unit 7 responding. We're 10 minutes out from that location." In the compartment behind him, Rex was already alert, sensing the shift in energy, the return to their primary purpose. The German shepherd sat up straighter, ears forward, ready for whatever came next. Ahead of them, the city waited with its endless calls for service, its emergencies and routine patrols. But something had shifted in Marcus's perspective. Beyond the procedures and protocols was something more fundamental, the profound capacity to make a difference, one alert, one intuition, one life at a time. And for a K9 officer and his remarkable partner, that was more than enough reason to answer the next call with renewed purpose. As they accelerated toward Westside Park, Marcus glanced once more at the silver-framed photograph now carefully secured in his gear bag. Another child needed them now, and they would respond with all the skill and dedication they possessed. But they carried with them the reminder of Emma Peterson, of what was possible when human and canine abilities combined in perfect partnership, when intuition was trusted, when the extraordinary capabilities of a seemingly ordinary German shepherd were given the respect they deserved. "Let's go find this boy, Rex," Marcus said, and was answered by a soft whine of readiness from his partner. "Let's bring him home." The patrol car turned onto the main boulevard, lights flashing but sirens silent for now. Another mission, another chance to make a difference. And whatever the outcome, Marcus knew they would face it together, officer and K9, partners in the truest sense of the word, bound by something that went beyond training and duty, to a deeper understanding of what it meant to protect and serve. 6 months after the incident at the Peterson home, autumn had transformed the city. Trees along the patrol routes blazed with color, and a crisp chill had replaced summer's humidity. For Marcus and Rex, the changing season brought new routines and responsibilities. K-9 Unit 7, please respond to Central Elementary School for the scheduled demonstration. Dispatch called over the radio. K-9 Unit 7 responding. Marcus confirmed, glancing at Rex in the rearview mirror. Ready for your adoring public, buddy? The German shepherd's ears perked up at the attention, his intelligent eyes meeting Marcus's in the mirror. Since the Peterson incident, their schedule had expanded to include more community outreach events, partly due to Captain Rivera's recognition of Rex's unique abilities, and partly because of the quiet fame that had spread through department channels about the dog who had sensed a medical emergency before anyone else could. Central Elementary School's playground was filled with children when they arrived, all seated in neat rows on a colorful parachute spread across the grass. Teachers stood at the perimeters, maintaining order with varying degrees of success as excitement rippled through the young audience. Officer Kane? Principal Martinez greeted them at the side entrance. We're so grateful you could fit us into your schedule. The children have been talking about nothing else all week. As Marcus and Rex made their way to the demonstration area, a familiar face appeared in the crowd. Emma Peterson sat in the front row, now in a different school but invited specially for this event. She waved enthusiastically, and Rex's tail gave a subtle wag of recognition. The demonstration proceeded as planned, Marcus explaining K-9 police work at an elementary level while Rex performed various commands, finding hidden objects, demonstrating obedience routines, and showing how he could detect specific scents. The children watched in rapt attention, gasping with delight when Rex successfully completed each task. Now, Marcus said, reaching the portion of the presentation he'd recently added, Rex has special abilities beyond what most police dogs are trained to do. Sometimes he can sense when a person needs medical help, even before they know it themselves. A teacher raised her hand. Is that what happened with Emma? Marcus nodded, and all eyes turned to Emma, who sat up straighter with pride. Exactly. Rex sensed that Emma was in danger before any human could tell. Scientists are still studying how dogs can do this. But we know they can sometimes smell changes in a person's body that might signal they're sick or in trouble. Like superheroes, a small boy called out from the back row. Marcus smiled. In a way, yes. But it's important to remember that even Rex needs training and practice to use his special abilities. Just like you need to practice reading or math to get better at it. After the demonstration, as children lined up to pet Rex under Marcus's careful supervision, Emma approached with a small package wrapped in newspaper comics. I made this in art class, she said, handing it to Marcus. It's for Rex's Wall of Fame. Inside was a clay plaque with Rex's paw print impressed in the center, surrounded by colorful glazed letters spelling Hero Dog. Emma had clearly spent considerable time on it, the details carefully painted and preserved. This is wonderful, Emma. I'll hang it in our special place at home, right where Rex can see it every day. As they prepared to leave, Principal Martinez approached with an unexpected proposal. Officer Kane, our school board has been discussing a new initiative, bringing therapy dogs to schools to help children with anxiety, learning difficulties, or emotional needs. After seeing Rex today and hearing about his extraordinary capabilities, we wondered if you might consult with us on the program. The request caught Marcus by surprise. Rex is primarily a working police dog, but he glanced down at his partner, who sat patiently watching the playground, alert but relaxed. "I'd be happy to share what I know about canine training and capabilities. And there might be opportunities for Rex to visit occasionally as a demonstration dog." "Wonderful. The research shows remarkable benefits for children who interact with trained dogs. And after what happened with Emma..." She lowered her voice. "Well, it makes one wonder what else these animals might be capable of detecting or preventing." On the drive back to the station, Marcus pondered the conversation. Rex's detection of Emma's medical emergency had opened doors neither of them had anticipated. Not just commendations and recognition, but new possibilities for service, new ways to utilize the extraordinary bond between handler and dog. "Looks like you might be adding school consultant to your resume, buddy," he told Rex, who watched the passing scenery with alert interest. Who knows where this path leads next? As they pulled into the station parking lot, Marcus's phone chimed with a message from Dr. Chen at Children's Memorial Hospital. "Research proposal approved. Can we schedule a meeting to discuss Rex's participation in our medical detection study?" Marcus smiled, showing the screen to Rex. "What do you think? Ready to help change how we think about medical detection?" Rex's response was a soft whine and an intent gaze. The same communication that had saved Emma's life. The same partnership that continued to evolve in ways neither could have predicted. "Yeah," Marcus said, reaching back to scratch behind Rex's ears. "I think we're ready too." As they walked into the station, several officers nodded in recognition, not just of Marcus, but of Rex as well. The German Shepherd had always been respected as a working K9, but now there was something more in those acknowledgments. A deeper appreciation for the extraordinary capabilities that lay within this seemingly ordinary police dog. Their next patrol would begin in an hour. The city waited with its unpredictable challenges and hidden emergencies. But whatever came their way, Marcus knew they would face it together. Their partnership strengthened by the knowledge of what they had already accomplished and what might still be possible. For an officer and his K9, the greatest adventures often began with the simplest of connections. A dog who noticed what humans could not, and a handler who trusted enough to listen.